What is the value that you see in such student-led conferences like ours?
Well, I see the value of student-led conferences as providing opportunities for the students to interact with all kinds of different senior people, academics, practitioners, to be able to obtain advice, knowledge, networks, insights from those individuals, and for individuals like myself as well, who are academics and also in the world of policy, to be able to learn what the young people of ASEAN want for their future, and to obtain insights as well. And I think it's a benefit to everyone, frankly, a win-win.
So I understand that you are an outspoken critic of providing foreign aid to Cambodia. And one of your arguments against foreign aid is that it actually disincentivizes sustainable economic development. So besides the economic repercussions, I was just wondering, what do you think the political consequences are of China providing foreign aid to Cambodia?
Right. Well, so China providing foreign aid or quasi-aid or aid-like instruments, as well as investment, creates dependence. Any country that has lent to another country 20% worth of its GDP is obviously going to have a large say in how that country behaves. And my argument is actually that rule of law and democracy are hurt when a country over-relies on foreign aid. But I think it would apply, especially in the case of China, because China does not ask about human rights, does not ask about democracy, does not care about corruption, in fact. All it cares about is, will Cambodia support China when the time comes? And there's an ASEAN vote that requires requires Cambodia to raise its hand and say, we don't support this resolution, therefore the resolution will not pass. These are the things that are worrisome. And of course, when Cambodia constantly needles the United States, it's acting as a proxy for China, essentially saying that what China can't say, will say in public, and will behave as if we're a province of China. This is very dangerous.
So in your opinion, do you think that ASEAN nations are building an effective political and security framework to address issues such as migration, transnational crimes, and human security?
I don't know enough about each of these areas to be able to say there is or isn't an effective framework. What I can say is that ASEAN's effectiveness, of course, has been varied over the years, right? So you have had situations in which ASEAN is unable to come to a resolution with respect to Myanmar as a member, and right now, in fact, with respect to the Rohingya crisis, I don't think ASEAN is providing any kind of framework that enables the resolution of this problem. When you have the ASEAN way, which allows one member state to either vote against the consensus or opt out of the decisions, it essentially allows that country to do whatever it wants, right? So as a full member of ASEAN, one would hope that there would be more than the minimum standards possible, which unfortunately is what happens when you have an organization that works on consensus. The minimum lowest common denominator is what essentially is the baseline for everything.
Mm-hmm. So based on your experience and also your knowledge, how feasible do you think regional cooperation is within different ASEAN members, considering the numerous territorial disputes within the region?
Well, obviously the claimants to the, say, South China Sea, or the parties that are in a dispute over Previhir, which is what Cambodia calls it, or Previham, which is what Thailand calls, that temple, this poses all kinds of problems. It shows that there is still, I think, the possibility for conflict, even among members of an organization that was created for the purpose of greater cooperation, greater possibility for peace and integration, and instead you have a result in which you can divide and conquer. So, in the case of the South China Sea, Vietnam obviously wants to claim very strongly its stake in the South China Sea. It is in conflict with China with respect to that claim. The Philippines was also of the view that it had a stake in it, until, of course, a different president came to power and essentially threw out the playbook of the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling that said that actually the Philippines does have a claim over this area. But there's always going to be a situation in which within ASEAN, regional cooperation is still important, and countries should be working together in order to try to move the needle, essentially. The challenge is moving that needle to a place where you're better off than you were before. And it's still worth trying. It's just that our expectations, I think, should be tempered with respect to how far an organization like ASEAN can bring cooperation to the fore.
So lastly, just to round it up, what would you like to say to Southeast Asian students like ourselves to encourage them to be more active global citizens?
Well, I'd like to say that all young people, including those in ASEAN, including those studying here in the UK, have a responsibility to be global citizens of the world. They are certainly members of their country as citizens of those countries, but they are more than just those members. They belong to the brotherhood of humanity, which requires, I think, a conscience and a moral that sees when wrong is done, to stand up and speak against those wrongs, and to stand up for what's right, and to always think about essentially those who are least fortunate in our society, not just in their country, but really in the world. The least fortunate are the ones who, if you thought about how, as an individual, how lucky you are to be where you are, what if you had been born instead in their situation? What would you want the justice system to behave like? Would it be that fairness would rule the day, or would it be that those who have power ought to rule? And I think that the young people today should remember that they're fortunate and that they have a responsibility to stand up for what's right.